this lesson, we're going to take a look at two of the most basic and useful bar chord shapes. A bar chord that is commonly thought of and taught as a beginner bar chord is F major. Now the thing is, bar chords are generally easier when they're played up the neck. There is a sweet spot. If you go too far up the neck, they become difficult to play because the frets are too narrow. And if you go down too low, it's a bit of a jump to learn your first bar chord as an F. It is possible, however, to get going quickly. We're going to start with the G major bar chord. And that looks like this. The G major bar chord is very similar to your G major open chord. If we listen to these notes, you'll hear there are some similarities between both shapes. So the lesson in that is, for a lot of your common open chords, you can also play them as bar chords. Now, why would you want to do that? The first reason is to have more options as a player. The second reason is some songs generally are done playing bar chords. There's a famous song, I won't say the name out loud here, but it goes like this. It goes, there's a well-known chord progression in pop that if I play a song like this, we'll say, you'll notice we've the high sound going down to the low, and there's a crisp sound from bar chords that if I do open chords, here's like so loud and ringy and boomy by nature. So that's the other big reason to look at bar chords. Now let's get into the shape. So here's the final product. To get there, we're going to do two things. I'm going to ask you to get an E major chord, like that. And then what you're going to do is you're actually going to change what fingers you play it with. So you're going to use your middle, pinky, and ring finger there. If you're unfamiliar with the E chord or with the new fingers there, they are listed in a diagram below this lesson. So we got that. Now that's step one. And what you do next is you keep those three fingers on the exact same strings. We are not changing strings here. We are going to slide them up a fret or two. So watch my fingers here. I'm going to go move them up as a group, 1, and I'm going to move it up 2 more frets, 1, 2. So that places your ring finger on the 5th fret of A, your pinky on the 5th fret of D, your middle finger on the 4th fret of G. That's step one in making this bar chord shape. And if you want to check you have that, and pick them one at a time. Now already you may find that there's a bit more of a spotlight on your fingers for having to press harder, and that is part of the difficulty and the learning with bar chords. So double check in that you're pressing hard enough. And finally then, you're going to keep that there, and wherever your thumb is on the back of the neck. So right now you have your 3 fingers where we already had them on those 3 notes. Now watch where my thumb is at the minute, and I'm going to drop it down ever so slightly. So it's on like the lower half of the neck. This half is okay, it's left open. We don't want this. If your thumb is up here, gently slide it down the neck so you get it here. And from that point then, press with your thumb and press with your 3 fingers, and that pressure point will give you a sound like this. So that is step one. So we got our E chord, we slid it up 1, 2, 3 frets, we checked for those coming out first, we had the thumb dropped. Now finally you'll get your index finger, and by the way, If your bar chord isn't coming out fully clear yet, no worries. This is all to do with just knowing where to position your fingers first. In the next lesson, we're going to look at how to get them all clear. So no panic right now if the chord isn't sounding that clear. Just be sure we're getting the positioning. So next thing we add on our index. Your index is basically going to go across the entire 3rd fret. And you see here, you can still see the silver lining of the fret. My finger is not up here because that's going to block it. So it's got to be just behind it. And I usually ask students, how many strings do you think you have to press on with your index here? What do you think? If you've answered 3, you're correct. If you answered 6, no problem. I answered the very same when I learned it. Because sometimes you think since it's across the 6 strings, you have to press on all 6. However, these 3 fingers are already on these 3 strings, so we don't have to press on those. They're covered. Working then on pressing with the tip of your index there on that string and the bottom 2 strings like that. And by the way, whenever you want to rest your hand, rest it. Bar chords are like all about strength, so there'll be times you'll be trying things and you'll just feel like your hand is saying, we got to pack this in. Give your hand a rest when it needs it. And I'll be getting into more strengthening tips in the next lesson. For now, we're just making sure we have our fingers in the correct position. And that's our G major bar chord. So that is one of the most basic and important bar chord shapes to learn first. And the great thing about bar chords is once you've learned one shape, you can move that shape around and have different chords. So watch as I take this shape. You notice I moved around, but it was the exact same shape for every chord. So your work with bar chords is going to pay off again and again all over the fretboard.